Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on Thomas of Woodstock and we get to hear from Bushy today in Act 4, Scene 3. So the things that have happened, these plots that the king and his flatterers had put together are starting to come to fruition. In Act 4, Scene 2, they arrived at Plashy House as maskers and they were successful in kidnapping Thomas so that they could ship him off to France. So things are moving along and not looking great for the uncles at this point. But in Act 4, Scene 3, we are at the palace and we're with Crosby, Fleming, and Nimble, and they're talking about how many people they have been able to arrest for treason in the recent days, and the fact that the sheriffs of Kent and of Northumberland are bringing all of these prisoners in. And shortly thereafter, the sheriffs of Kent and Northumberland bring some prisoners in, but the sheriffs then also get arrested because they are not dispersing and then collecting on the blank charters the way that they are supposed to be. And they're like, but we thought we got to govern ourselves. And Tressilian is like, no, these blank charters are so that the king can collect taxes at a later date. And the sheriffs push back a little bit, but they're like, nope, you are presumptuous traitors. And the sheriffs are arrested and they are taken off to go to prison, along with all of the people that the sheriffs had also arrested for treason. So at this point, it's just Tressilian and Nimble left on the stage. And Tressilian is like, you're Nimble, right? And Nimble's like, yes. And I have figured out how to arrest a man for whistling. And Tressilian is like, for whistling? And he's like, yep, check it out. I've arrested these 700 potential traitors, some of them even just for whistling things that could potentially be traitorous, and these 700 men are currently in jail. And Tressilian and Crosby think that this is great, and they're like, okay, so there's these 700 men who are in jail. We should go collect on their lands and then hang them, because their land is worth more to us than their lives are. So let's be done with the lives, but collect on the lands, because like, what else are we going to do with these 700 prisoners? Like, eventually they're going to run out of space. They got to clear out the jails somehow. So then Bagot comes in, and Nimble and Crosby and some others leave. So it's Bagot and Tressilian, and Bagot tells Tressilian that the king is very distressed because Queen Anne is not well, which we already knew because the Duchess of Gloucester was being sort of kicked out of Plashy House so that she could go and be with the queen, who is very sick, and Thomas is very concerned about what is going to happen to the nation if Queen Anne happens to die. So Bagot comes in and tells Tressilian that the king is distressed because the queen is ill. But then Bushy comes in and lets all of them know that the queen has actually died. She passed at this point. So Tressilian is like, how did the king take this news? And Bushy says, fares like a madman, rends his princely hair, beats his sad breast, falls groveling on the earth, all careless of his state, wishing to die, and even in death to keep her company. But that which makes his soul more desperate, amidst this heat of passion, weeping comes. His aunt the Duchess, Woodstock's hapless wife, with tender love and comfort, at sight of whom his griefs again redoubled, calling to mind the lady's woeful state, as yet all ignorant of her own mishap. He takes her in his arms, weeps on her breast, and would have there revealed her husband's fall amidst his passions, had not Scroop and Green by violence borne him to an inward room, where still he cries to get a messenger to send to Calais to reprieve his uncle. So the long and the short of it is, King Richard is not taking the death of Queen Anne very well. He's pulling out his hair and he's raving and he's crying and he's in the depths of grief and mourning. But then the Duchess of Gloucester Woodstock's wife, arrives. From the sounds of this, she arrived maybe a little too late to see Queen Anne, but she is there to see Richard dealing with Anne, and Richard then seeing the Duchess of Gloucester and knowing what he has done to her by kidnapping Woodstock and sending him away. He all of a sudden feels very guilty all over again, and he's hugging her and wants to comfort her. And he comes this close to admitting that they kidnapped Woodstock and sent him to France, but Scroop and Green violently took him to another room and shut him up so that he can cry in there by himself, but hopefully not give away the plot that they kidnapped Woodstock and sent him off to France. But while Richard is in this other room, he's saying, get a messenger, we got to send somebody to Calais to get Woodstock back and bring him back. So the three of them, once this monologue is done, the three of them talk about sort of how perilous this situation is, because if Richard tells people that they have kidnapped Woodstock and sent him off to France, that's really bad news for all of them, because Woodstock was very much beloved by the people. But then the king comes in to this scene, and he is very much mourning for Anne, and we will get to hear some of that mourning from Richard directly in tomorrow's monologue. So I'll see you then for that. Mwah.